The first time Daniel noticed her, it wasn't because of her face. It was the way she held the coffee cup, carefully, with both hands, as if it were something fragile and sacred. Steam curled up between them, and for a moment he forgot where he was. The cafe sat on the corner of a quiet street, tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. It was the kind of place his late wife Emily had loved: soft yellow lights, the faint hum of an old jazz playlist, the scent of roasted beans and vanilla syrup lingering in the air. Daniel hadn't meant to walk in. He had been passing by after another exhausting day at work when the rain started, heavy and sudden. He ducked inside to escape it. He hadn't expected to feel ambushed by memory. "Your coffee, sir," the waitress said gently. Her voice wasn't identical to Emily, but it carried the same softness, the same calm steadiness that made people lean in rather than pull away. Daniel looked up, prepared to nod politely and retreat into himself the way he always did. Then he saw her. She wasn't a copy of Emily. Not exactly. Her hair was darker, pulled back in a loose bun. Her eyes were a different shade, hazel instead of gray. But there was something in the way she tilted her head slightly when she smiled, something in the curve of her mouth, the warmth in her expression. It was like looking into a familiar reflection that time had slightly altered. "Thank you," he managed. She set the cup down carefully in front of him. "Let me know if it's too strong. We've got a new blend today." Emily used to say the same thing when she experimented with new beans at home. Daniel's chest tightened. After she walked away, he sat staring at the coffee. He almost didn't drink it, but the aroma was inviting and he needed something to anchor him. It tasted perfect, balanced, warm. He closed his eyes, and for a fleeting second, he was back in his kitchen on a Sunday morning, sunlight spilling over the counter while Emily laughed about something trivial. He could almost hear her voice teasing him for always adding too much sugar. When he opened his eyes, the cafe returned. The rain tapped against the windows. The waitress moved from table to table, offering refills and soft smiles. He shouldn't come back, he told himself. It wasn't fair, to her, to himself, to Emily's memory. But the next evening, he found his feet carrying him there again. This time she noticed him first. "Back already?" she asked with a playful smile. "I guess the coffee left an impression," he replied, trying to keep his tone casual. "I'm glad," she said. "I'm Sarah." Daniel hesitated a fraction of a second before answering. "Daniel." She didn't flinch at his reserved demeanor. She didn't press him with questions. She just nodded and went to prepare his drink without asking for his order. It was exactly how Emily used to do it, after years of knowing his preferences by heart. Daniel felt something crack open inside him, something he had sealed shut since the day he stood in a hospital room, holding Emily's cold hand as machines went silent. He told himself it was coincidence. Mannerisms overlap. Kindness isn't unique to one person. And yet, when Sarah returned with his coffee and placed it in front of him with that same careful reverence, he felt as if life was playing a cruel trick on him. Or perhaps a merciful one. Weeks passed, and Daniel's visits became routine. He would sit at the same small table near the window, always ordering the same drink. Sarah would greet him with that gentle smile, sometimes asking about his day, sometimes simply sitting for a moment when the cafe was slow. He learned that she worked double shifts to help her younger brother through college, that she loved old movies and rainy evenings, that she believed everyone carried a story they didn't talk about. "You look like someone who thinks too much," she teased one evening, sliding into the chair across from him. "Is that a bad thing?" he asked. "It can be," she said, "especially if you're thinking about things you can't change." Her words struck deeper than she could have known. Daniel hadn't spoken about Emily to anyone outside his family in over a year. Friends had tried at first, but grief made him distant, difficult to reach. Eventually, they stopped asking. But something about Sarah made silence feel heavier than truth. My wife used to love places like this, he said quietly. Sarah didn't react with exaggerated sympathy. She didn't offer pity. She just listened. She passed away 2 years ago, he continued, his voice rough. Sometimes I still expect to see her when I walk through the door at home. Sarah's eyes softened, not with sadness alone but with understanding. I'm sorry, she said simply. He studied her face, searching for differences, for proof that he wasn't slowly losing his mind. But the more he looked, the more he saw echoes of Emily, not physically but in spirit. The patience, the warmth, the way she let him finish speaking without interruption. You remind me of her, he admitted before he could stop himself. Sarah blinked, surprised. In a good way, I hope. The best way, he whispered. For a moment something unspoken passed between them. Not replacement, not comparison, just recognition. After that night their conversations grew longer. She would sit with him after closing, the lights dimmed low, the world outside quiet. They talked about everything and nothing, childhood memories, favorite songs, regrets, dreams. One evening, as they locked up the cafe together, Daniel realized he was laughing, really laughing. It startled him. He hadn't laughed like that since before the hospital corridors and the unbearable silence of coming home alone. You look different when you smile, Sarah said softly. How so? Lighter. He wanted to tell her she was the reason. That sitting across from her felt like stepping into sunlight after years of shadow, but he was afraid. Afraid that he wasn't seeing her clearly. Afraid that he was chasing a ghost through someone else's eyes. The turning point came unexpectedly. It was Emily's birthday. Daniel hadn't planned to leave the house that day. He had taken time off work, intending to sit alone with memories. But loneliness pressed in too hard, and before he realized it, he was standing outside the cafe. Sarah noticed immediately that something was wrong. You don't have to tell me, she said, guiding him to his usual seat. But you don't have to carry it alone either. He broke then, not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet tears slipping down his face as he told her about Emily's birthday traditions. The pancakes shaped like hearts, the handwritten notes tucked into coat pockets, the way she insisted on dancing in the kitchen. Sarah listened, then stood without a word. A few minutes later she returned with a small plate. 2 pancakes, slightly uneven, shaped as best as possible into hearts. I'm not great at this, she said shyly. But I thought maybe traditions shouldn't disappear. Daniel stared at the plate, vision blurred. His chest ached, but not from loss alone. From gratitude. You don't have to be her, he said suddenly, looking up at Sarah. She met his gaze steadily. I don't want to be. I know, he said, and I think that's why you feel so familiar. She reached across the table, her hand hovering before gently covering his. I'm not the mirror of your wife, she said softly, but maybe we're both reflections of something you loved. In that moment, Daniel understood. He hadn't been drawn to Sarah because she resembled Emily. He had been drawn to her because she carried the same light, the same kindness, the same quiet strength that had made him fall in love once before. Love hadn't died with Emily. It had simply been waiting, reshaped, patient. Daniel wrestled with guilt for weeks after that night. Was he betraying Emily by feeling something for Sarah, or was he honoring her by allowing himself to live again? He found his answer in an old letter Emily had written him years ago, tucked inside a book he hadn't opened since her passing. It was playful, written after a minor argument, ending with the line, "If I ever leave this world before you, promise me you won't stop chasing sunsets." He read that sentence over and over. The next evening, he asked Sarah to walk with him after her shift. They strolled along the quiet street, the sky painted in streaks of orange and pink. The air was cool, carrying the scent of rain-soaked pavement. I've been afraid, he admitted. Of what? Of loving you for the wrong reasons. Sarah stopped walking. "And what are the right reasons?" she asked gently. He thought carefully before answering. "Because when you laugh, I don't hear echoes. I just hear you. Because when you talk about your dreams, I want to see you achieve them. Because when I imagine tomorrow, you're in it, not as a replacement, but as yourself." Her eyes glistened, but she smiled. "I don't want to compete with a memory," she said, "but I don't mind standing beside it." Daniel took her hand, this time without hesitation. "You're not a mirror," he said. "You're proof that love leaves imprints on us, that it teaches us how to recognize goodness when we see it again." The sun dipped lower, bathing them in golden light. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't feel torn between past and present. Emily would always be part of him, the laughter, the lessons, the warmth they shared. But Sarah was not her shadow. She was her own sunrise. As they stood there, watching the sky fade into twilight, Daniel realized something simple and profound. Grief had once convinced him his heart was broken beyond repair. But hearts, like mirrors, don't just reflect what was. They can catch new light too.